beautifuls. You are listening to Bliss and Grit. I'm Vanessa Scotto, and I'll be joined soon by my dear friend and co-host, Brooke Thomas. On the show, we're talking about being on the embodied spiritual path, and what does that actually mean? What is a real evolution of our lives? How do we ultimately embrace everything? All the beauty and crazy, the joys and the messes, the bliss and the grit that is a human life. In this episode, we're talking about what happens when you lose the sense that you, quote unquote, have it all together. As humans, it seems we're always trying to pin things down. We want to categorize, create step-by-step action plans, essentially identify and solidify life, even ourselves. But as we've evolved on our own paths, we're noticing that our ability to conceive of ourselves as these people who have it all together is slipping right through our fingers. And we've got a lot to say about how that's happening and, quite frankly, why that's challenging. Of course, in this process, we're also offering a potential new way we can all orient towards life as the ability to believe that we can pin everything down falls away. If you're enjoying the show, of course, we'd be delighted if you left a review on iTunes or our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. It helps people find the show and it helps us build a really sweet community. Also, you can head over to blissandgrit.com and you can subscribe to get our new weekly digest of all of the things and resources that we're currently loving. One last thing before we head into the conversation, Brooke and I sometimes have a tendency to curse. So if you're in mixed company, you may want to wear some headphones. Okay, everyone, here we go.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello, darling.
Okay, so our last episode was with beautiful Jeannie Zandy, which was so sweet. So I'm thinking, of course, about things that came up in that talk. And it's interesting. We had this opportunity to talk with this really amazing teacher who really gets dark night and really gets fear. And as I mentioned in the call, that's been, and as you well know, one of my major issues. Like I've really been in dark night in this last year, starting November. So coming up on the 1-year anniversary of like, wow, I really can't function the way I used to function, and fear in the night and all those things I talked about. And so it was so great because I didn't know if I would, but I let myself go there. And I actually asked Jeannie, what was really, truly up for me. And in the time that we're recording, it airs tomorrow. And I'm finding myself nervous. Like I feel like I've outed myself, and we continually do this on this show.
I know, which is so funny.
It's like always like, well, this is the really vulnerable one. And that's what the show is for, is that we get to be vulnerable people, and that we're two people who are on a path, and we're talking about it in a genuine way and not in a glossed over, tidied up way. But man, do I want to be the tidied up person. And I'm also at this stage in my work life where I'm getting more and more of what I call the spiritual mentoring clients, or what we also call the coaching clients, the work you and I both do in private practice. And I can see how incrementally over time, my Rolfing practice is going to transition to more and more of that work. And so there's also this desire to feel like a good advertisement for the path, just because culturally we have such a way of follow me, do this thing, and it'll be awesome. Your life's going to get awesome. It's just going to be better and better and better. And even though that's not at all what people hire me for, and it's not at all what you and I talk about here, there's still just this desire to say, I'm way down the road on the path. You'll love it. It's great, and I can certainly say the things about it that are great. A lot of suffering has fallen away, but there's also, I've hit that, caked on layer, the like blackened, sticky, when you have a really bad cooking night in the frying pan and you're like chipping it off kind of feeling. And there is just in this path like an emptying out process, it seems, that has nothing to do with it being in my control or whatever. So I'm having a little bit of a vulnerability hangover and just wanting to like pin down being the one that has it figured out. And it's funny too, because talking with Jeannie, I'm also noticing like in my client work, for a while I was really into certain inquiry tools, cognitive tools. What are the stories? What are the pain bodies? And I'm still very interested in those tools. But I've also been noticing over the last month or 2 months that I'm doing a lot more of the realization process work of just really being in the body. And then I'm also talking with Jeannie about my own terror, and I'm realizing that I don't need to over-identify with the body. You know, so I'm basically just, everything is very, every time I try to be like, okay, this is the plan, this is the method, this is how we do it here. It's just like, oh, let me show you this part that doesn't at all fit into that tidy little equation. I'm like, okay, new equation over here. Got it. And then it's like, nope, here's the part of that doesn't fit in here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about not being the together person and what this path actually is, and wanting to feel like the together person. And also just that we, no matter how many times we want to go, okay, got it. New announcement, everyone. A plus B equal. It's just not the way it goes. And it's just that constant, like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to be letting go of the reins for the next forever. It just seems to be a coming to terms with that there will never be reins to hold on to, that they were completely a figment of my imagination, but there's still this phantom movement of trying to do it. That's what's on my mind.
I don't even know what I'm going to say about this
week. Yeah. I mean, it splits off in a bunch of different directions. So we'll see which ones we actually take.
There's a bunch of different directions. I'm thinking, I remember I've mentioned this before, is when we interviewed Kier and Trace, that I was saying something like, and often when you find the truth, there's a sense of relief because that's what I've experienced. And she was like, don't even pin that down. Like, don't even count on that. You know, like, don't count on anything. Don't predict anything. Right. And it's like, eek, you know, that desire to want to create some form of predictability or control or expectation as a human is so deep. And then last week when we were talking to Jeannie, you know, same thing. What I was saying was perhaps even more subtle, but it was something like, for example, I think in resisting trying to get attached to awakening, I was already attached to awakening, right? It's like all of these different subtle movements in which we're just trying to get this sequenced out and we're trying to get it together. All of it. Ourselves, our identity, the process. You know, we want some fucking predictability. Come on, please. And it's so, I guess vulnerable is a good word, but there's just something maybe even for me indescribable about sitting over and over again with you don't know and you're not in control.
We're talking about groundlessness again.
I mean,
there it is again.
Your idea.
I know.
I mean, there it is again. Like, you don't know, you have no control. I mean, the identity, what did you say? The have it all together identity?
Yeah.
So that's like close cousin for me of the good girl identity. They're not the same, but are they closely related? It's this desire to be seen in a good light. It's a desire to be seen as somebody who's contributory, right? Who can make an impact, who can make a difference. And then right underneath that is the desire to have what I want in my life, which I somehow have decided is only going to be given to me if other people see me as good or contributory.
That's the survival mechanism, right? Like, I get my needs met if I'm the good one, the likable
Yeah.
one, the together one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is such a weird locus of control, right? Because you think it's inner locus of control because you're trying to be good or put together, but it's actually super externalized because people have to approve of you.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's all built on a lie that anyone is in control other than life. So it's this clusterfuck.
I want you to drop the mic.
See ya, bitches. I'm out. And that's all I have to say
That's
about
all I
this.
got.
Yeah. So it's this like complete clusterfuck. I remember when we started the show, and here we are, and we're talking about things that are at that moment so vulnerable to us. Oftentimes we looked back and we were like, I don't know what
I
the
know.
big
Why
deal
was that? Why did that
just
feel
like you will with your terror thing. Like
Sure.
you'll look back and be like, oh yeah, that was no big deal. And I remember when I started getting clients from the show, like people writing saying, oh, I'm really resonating. And I was like, huh? But I'm a mess on the show. Right? Like I'm not doing any of that together thing that our modern culture would have you believe you have to do in order for people to connect with you, feel inspired by you, want to be facilitated or supported by you, right? And it was this like minor surprise that, oh, after all, at the end of it, people want humanness.
Yeah.
And they want connection. And they want authenticity. Like, duh, right?
I know. Good do it. I know, but you see so much of the, I saw someone calling it the other day, which I don't know, maybe this is common knowledge to certain groups of people, but the female lifestyle empowerment brand. Have you heard FLEs?
No.
So
what about men? Men don't get to fall into this category?
Well, there are certainly, as we know, the male equivalents, but the blog I was reading, which of course I'm forgetting her name now, is a feminist blog. And she's also an entrepreneur and helps people with entrepreneurship. So it's like, what is genuine entrepreneurship as opposed to the female lifestyle empowerment brand, the FLEs, which always go a certain way. You're super fuckable. Your Instagram feed is on it. And it has things like you in a bikini under a waterfall saying, I don't need anyone's approval.
I finally love myself.
Really? You know, and then it's also kind of affluent and you like travel, you're at these like amazing locales and you're like hobnobbing with important people. And, it's become this program that people run that says, basically, I have it together. I'm crushing it at life and you want it. And pay me and I can help you.
I'm just laughing thinking about your Instagram feed and how you're like, here's a
my Instagram feed is like, I saw a rock.
Here's a picture of ice cream.
I ate it. Video of grass moving. I have the world's most boring Instagram feed. Not a very good FLE Instagram feed.
It's beautiful, but it is failing at the FLE.
It does not, it's not winning in that kind of, look at me, pay me, and you can be like me too. But it's so interesting because I had to answer for myself the question, I think this goes on continually, and maybe it does for you with your clients because, people come to us for this work for the same reasons we sought it out too, which are some combo platter of like, there's suffering happening. There's a desire for clarity. There's a desire for contentment. There's a desire for like a really nourishing life, but they've realized, and we realized, in our own paths and with working with our own mentors and teachers, that like this way of trying to be the together person and like acquire more impressive successes or characteristics, isn't working. Like it's making things worse. And yet I still have to answer for myself the question, with my clients when they're going through a deconstruction process, some of them, and I am going through a deconstruction process. Like, what is it we're doing? You know, I mean, who's going to want to, it's like, it's a tough sell. You know, everything will get emptied out. I don't know how long that'll take. Not that this is my cell. It's just that this sometimes is what's going on for some of the people I'm working with.
Well,
it's not
certainly
like this
what
is
we're talking about here.
It is totally. It's not like that's what's required. And my client work actually spans quite a lot of different needs and things like that. But, I came across this quote as I was like sitting with that the other night. I found my manual from the realization process when we trained with Judith, and I had scribbled little things Judith had said on it while she was teaching us. And it was just this great little quote. I love when you ask for something like, really, just something, you know, give me something to hold on, just a little something to hold on to here about like, what is it we're actually doing here? Yeah. And she was just saying that, you know, the more that we come into really intimate contact with ourselves, the more that we get embodied, the more we truly get to become subject in our lives as opposed to object in our lives. And we've talked about that a lot, but that's one of those phrases that if you really take it in and if you really explore it, you can explore it forever. And you realize just how much we are all conditioned to be object, you know, in every possible way. The good object, the bad object, the hot object, the smart object, the together object. Everything is, like you said, the locus of control is way out there. What does the world think of me? Is this the kind of one that gets love in the world? And if not, how can I make this one, this object, more lovable? It's so heartbreaking, like when you really take it in deeply. And the embodied work in the example of the realization process, it really is deeply a coming home to like, you get to just be. End of sentence. Like it is just your moment by moment unfolding. You get to actually experience the world instead of wondering if the world is going to approve of you or not, and if you're going to get your needs met or not. And it's so beautiful. And it really is like a felt experience, you know, that when you can land in yourself, you get to have this experience of like, oh, just like actually literally experience, and not always evaluating through the lens of, will this be likable? Will this get what I want? Will it work out? You know, it's this profound liberation. So even though the deconstruction feels, you know, sometimes quite a lot like a scary free fall, it's also this invitation that you get to actually be subject and not object, which is a radical thing to do in our world, and foreign, very foreign.
This is going to sound like a tangent, but my brain just went a lot of ways while you were talking. And I'm thinking about when we were talking to Jeannie last week, and did you say this to her out loud, or was it prior? I mean, on the call, or was it prior when we were chatting with her? But just talking about how like Glamour magazine used to have those like top 3 ways to get ultra
she mentioned
hot.
that. Yeah. She 17 magazine or whatever. Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, they still do that. Top 5 ways to make a man want you.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like all of these different. And it's so hard not to want to be better. And I mean, in this really tangible way, where at the core of it, you don't understand you're already good.
Exactly.
It's that. It's like, it's not that there's a problem if you want to learn to be a triathlete, or you want to learn to play the piano, or you want to learn to be an excellent public speaker. Like, it's not the drive to excel or be excellent that's the problem. It's that sneaky little feeling underneath that you are somehow not good, somehow bad, somehow shameful, corrosive, disgusting, broken, unwhole, unclean. You know, you can fill in the blanks. That's driving so much of it. And then when I have that little, don't know if she means creature body, but the word creature, I just don't want to use Jeannie's word inaccurately, but the word creature came up to me like when this little being comes up that says, I am not good, then every movement after that has this fear and this lack embedded in it, right? So then even if it is my heart's desire to, I don't know, ride horses, if it starts to get co-opted by this voice that says, oh, you're going to look great on Instagram riding horses and people are going to love it. And then you'll be this horsewoman.
Yeah,
and then
and maybe that'll be a part of your job. And then you can, like add that whole service in. Yeah.
And you won't even have to work hard because you're going to love riding horses.
Right. It'll just be like vacation all the time. Yeah.
I heard Matt Kahn say last week in his latest video that he had put up something like, maybe you heard this too, something like fear is also consciousness. So fear can co-opt consciousness, that it's not like, oh, just because something comes from the depths, like bubbles up from source and is really pure, that it can't be co-opted by fear, because fear is consciousness too. Like it's all a part of it. And so this real genius that can arise for you can be co-opted by fear. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, that's the story for me of the not enough ego, right? That's like, oh, great idea, Vanessa. You want to do a podcast? Great. And then it starts to tell you little stories about how cool your life can be and you don't have to work anymore and then you can make money. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Thankfully, the podcast has been pretty uncontaminated, but just talking about that movement. And, I guess the other thing I wanted to say, it was funny about sales, like sales specifically, because you were talking about mentorship and coaching and Rolfing, and like we have businesses that are theoretically built around our expertise and us having something figured out and giving you solutions. But the funny thing is, then that also rests in the idea that we are in control of how someone else will want or desire something.
Yeah.
When in reality, sure, I can present something to you that may push a little button, a little fear signal in you that may create a vibration that may make someone move to action. But if anyone's really committing to a path, it's because of them. It's right. It's like that whole thing where, and this is the funny thing about the deconstruction phase of spirituality. I mean, we've been saying this since day one, the Chug Yum Trungpa thing. If you could just sit and watch TV your whole life and not go on a spiritual path,
please do that. I recommend
that. You're welcome to it.
Yes, exactly.
But if you can't, here's where it's at. So I imagine not everyone who listens to us, but most of you who are listening, I know certainly for you and I, Brooke, there is no question anyway. We couldn't possibly help it because we were never in charge of that inspiration or that movement towards truth and towards wholeness. Because isn't that what it is? I mean, it is why The Matrix was a very genius movie, barring one aspect of it that I don't like. But the genius part of it is when he's presenting him with these two pills and he's like, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? And one is you stay in delusion and the other is you see truth, right? And that is a philosophically difficult question for human beings. Do you want to stay in your delusion or do you want truth? And when he chooses truth, there is a bit of a shitstorm. What I don't agree with is it always stays a shitstorm. It's like a disaster to have truth in that world.
Yeah, I know.
Like nothing's beautiful really about it other than love and realness. The realness is the beauty. But
yeah, it's an extra tough sell on truth on in there. And the aliens are harvesting babies. And
you're like just part of the pod. And yet, if you've ever had that debate, if you've ever been dorky enough like I am around sci-fi to have that debate with someone late at night, like what would you do? Most people would go towards truth. So interesting.
Yeah.
So here we are, and you go towards truth. And truth has all of it because mostly we've been hiding from truth most of our lives. I think that's really the thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when we choose truth, or it chooses us, really. And then we come into contact with others about that, whether it's in a sangha or, working with a coach or a mentor. It is a completely different frame from what we're used to, which is the answer seeker and the answer haver, and I'm going to deliver the information to the answer seeker, because I can pin down the way this goes like this, I can pin down the blueprint. And as I just am continually humbled by my own process, and that I am not in control of it, I have a lot of support and I have a lot of dedication. Great. But then from there, it just does itself. And I have so much respect for the mystery of it. I have so much gratitude for the amount of support that I have. And it's like, that's the same thing we're doing with anyone who's genuinely on a path. It's just holding space for whatever they're doing. It's like a midwife doesn't make a baby for you. They don't do anything about that, but they love you through the process, and they're there like when it's go time. Mm-hmm. and they're there after to be like, nursing goes like this, and this is like how you swaddle and whatever. Not like your midwife comes home with you forever. Eventually that baby's yours, but like they're holding space for a process, which is a very different model than, oh, you're hiring me to, whip up a baby for you. What kind do you like? It'll go like this. Here you go. You're welcome. And for me, that's just been, it's been really sweet, actually. I mean, the thing that I noticed, like in the good news category, is that the more that I can do that, let's say with client work, it's so much more joyful. And I know you feel this way too, right? Like you just show up. You don't have a plan. Like, I'm going to pass on this important nugget to this person. Or I remember last week they talked about blah, de blah. So we had better make sure to like get that, push that one up through the soil and really talk about it. What ends up happening is it's just like, you get to be in the mystery because you don't have any plan about at all what you're going to say or do or what's going to come out of your mouth. And it's just this loving them. It's just this profound love and respect for their autonomy, which I've found so much more satisfying than the model of the answer haver.
Mm-hmm. Here's how I'm going to fix you. How I'm going to fix you is very stressful. It has its implications.
It's so stressful. And even if it's not like, here's how I'm going to fix you because I've got it all figured out, even if it's like way a bunch of steps removed from that, and it's just the stuff I was talking about at the beginning of the call, like, oh, okay, here's the plan. First we inquire about this, and then we and then we It's like, I don't know when I meet with a person what any of them's going to need, because in myself I've discovered I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to unfold next in the mystery. I don't know.
I think the paradox is that there's room for both.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it even more confounding. Because even you can't just
even
rest in the resting,
the not
right?
pinning down.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a time and a place where there are certain embodiment practices that are more procedural. Like there are steps, right?
Yes.
The steps are still inviting a direct experience, and that's what we're looking for. But nevertheless, it's like, first I will relax my feet, then I will relax my hands, then I will go to my tailbone, right? Like we have kind of steps that we walk through and a sort of script that we're practicing from. And that actually has some remarkable benefits.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I've had a lot of embodiment practices like that revelations, releases, openings, wonderful. Kundalini shakings, fabulous. And then I know they're bad.
I don't find them fabulous, but
no, they're
if
terrible.
Someone does, that's great.
No, they're fine. I just try to like ground into my feet now, like Judith said too.
Okay.
And it's been helping quite a bit. But Jeannie's meditation. So I downloaded Jeannie's meditation. What is it called? The Benevolent Thief.
Benevolent Thief. I downloaded it too.
Jeannie and her words.
So good.
So, and then there you are. It's this kind of different thing where it's just like space, be here, space, be here, just be here. How about here? Want to be here? Beautiful to be here. Nothing wrong with here. You can be here. Beautiful. Let's be here. Be here with me. Be here, and that's kind of the meditation. So there's nothing really procedural. There's no step-by-step. And that's been beautiful. And that's been really opening. And that's been really releasing. And I don't know if I needed one before the other.
Sure.
I don't know if there's phases, but it seems to me what we've always said, there's different medicines at different moments, and kind of the human journey is we're going to try to cling to something and we're going to try to pin it down. And then we're going to learn something about that, which is I'm leading up to reading Reggie's quote.
Yay. I'm so glad we get to get it in. Such a good one.
I'm going to read 2 by him. Let me start off.
Reggie Ray, by the way. We always just call him Reggie, even though we've never met him. We pretend like we have slumber parties with him. Reggie Ray.
He's our best. He's our psychic teacher. He just doesn't know it.
Exactly.
Okay. So Reggie Ray, we expect you to read the show notes. That's why we don't give you names. No, I'm just kidding.
You have an assignment.
Here's quote number 1. Samsara, which the Buddhists talk about as like, gosh, I don't even know how to begin to describe it, but samsara is kind of the world of illusion, the world of delusion, okay, where we can feel all of this distress. Samsara happens only and strictly because we try to pin things down. And this is followed by, when we resist the urge to pin things down, then we experience real freedom.
Can you read the only and strictly one again? I know you read it at the beginning of the call, but each time it hits another sweet spot.
Samsara happens only and strictly because we try to pin things down.
Yeah, that one, man, you can take that in for days. Because that's what with the terror layer that doesn't have content or whatever, that's what I find I can track to, is that there was some tiny thought. I mean, tiny. Like, I had better remember to run the washing machine. That will just give a little hit of it, And I'm starting to be able to see the mechanics of it, that before there is during the day, at night, it's just waking up randomly, but and not in any kind of panic attack way, but it's really just this gut, there's something I'm trying to pin down. Sometimes it can be a to-do list item like that, but sometimes it can be a regret, like a way I wish I had been as I interacted with a friend, or a plan, how am I gonna blah, blah, blah. It just seems like I'm at a stage where whenever I do even any tiny pin down like that, it makes my body feel sick, which leaves me in a place where I'm getting very immediate and direct feedback that does not feel good, that does not work. And so I'm starting to be able to have the experience of, well, then if I can notice that, if I can track the mechanics of that, then I can let that go and just be, right? Just come back to being whatever that is, whatever's actually happening in the moment. It doesn't just look like me sitting in my house staring at a wall, It's like, okay, well, I'm in the middle of chopping vegetables. Maybe I'll just chop vegetables instead of, wondering what I should remember to get together for Vanessa and I to have the Patreon thing finally on the podcast or whatever. It's like, I'll just do this thing that's right in front of me. And that soothes it. Like, talk about direct feedback about suffering being created from those, and it required a level of shedding to get to that layer of sensitivity, which again, it's not the best advertisement for it. Right? You'll love being this sensitive. If you have any tiny little out of alignment thought, you'll feel like you want to throw up. It's great. You'll love it over here.
Ding.
Yay.
Poster girl.
But it's what's happening. It's very direct feedback about that.
Yeah. Well, he was giving the examples, for example, about pinning down states of being. So I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm sick. And he was like, if you were to really look closely, your hunger may even ebb and flow. You may be starving because lunch got delayed at work. You push past, and then all of a sudden the hunger is gone because it pushed into a different place, or you're tired. But then when you're engaging with another thing, you're actually not tired. You're feeling quite a bit of inspiration or upliftment or sick. That even has its ebb and flow. So we try to pin these things down in a way, like I couldn't possibly because I'm tired. Yeah. Can be one of the statements that follows. But I think the slipperiest thing can be identities, just like we were talking about. I mean, I couldn't possibly be the one who has it all together if I don't know all the answers. Yeah. And then that means I'm not good. Mm-hmm. And so then that means I'm what? Badish? Bad light? Mm-hmm. Suckaroo? Like, what's the category I get to fall in? Mm-hmm. I think we're desperate to do that self-referencing thing where we pin ourselves down. And maybe it goes back to what I was saying about that little feeling at the core. And we talked about this with Jeannie last week as well, that feels like I'm not good enough already, because only by pinning down some kind of solid identity can we feel shored up and approvable and worthy of something. And then it's occurring to me, even as we're talking, that maybe the movement to pin down even who you are is not only about being good and lovable and likable and worthy and like on a path to happiness, but maybe it's because as long as we're identified with the world of form, like form is the only reality, we can't possibly know the more, the other, the mystery, the unseen, the kind of larger web we're being held in. And that can be so scary, not to understand that we're held and that we're not alone and that we're not just a body that's going to pass. So then maybe out of fear for the abyss, because we're really misunderstanding, since we're not tuning into that frequency, we're misunderstanding it's not there. Maybe we shore ourselves up tighter. Like even when I was doing Jeannie's meditation, one thing that came to me, and then she sort of alluded to it a few minutes down the line in the meditation, was my tensions in my body are boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean boundaries to people, boundaries to my family. I don't just mean historical boundaries. It's like they're boundaries to feeling at one. Yeah. Like, because where I have tension, I feel denser. Mm-hmm. It's like I did a meditation with Francis Lucille at the Science and Non-Duality Conference. And he was saying something like a lot of the meditations were like preconceptual, like before you knew what a body was, and you knew what skin was, and you knew what bones were, and you knew what eyes were. Experience your body pre-concept, the way a child would, right? And Rupert Spira did something very similar. And if you kept investigating your direct experience, actually, you don't have skin. There is no differentiation between you and the atmosphere. Yeah. None. Until you have a concept that there is a differentiation. And then you work along that line, you pin down that concept and you act as if, right? And you believe as if. But without that, it's all just one with the atmosphere, except for I could feel these tensions, and where the tensions were, I could almost feel like maybe it's still a delusion, but nevertheless, this experience of a dividing line. Yeah. Like a little density that kind of is like doing its best to hold back from the no.
I love the realization process, right? Because you can like really explore those nooks and crannies and also feel that you are continuous with the space if you don't have the densities. But I think what you were saying is so the scariest part of all of this, I think for many of us, is if I let go of those densities or those boundaries, which it actually really is more like they let go of you, the more you soften over time, as opposed to you cognitively go, let go now, and then they let go. It just doesn't work that way. But But the trust fall, I mean, it is the scariest trust fall ever because we don't have any direct experience if we've spent our whole lives conditioned to defend, plan, grasp, manipulate, maintain. You know, if that's all of our conditioning, to just let go into the idea that we are held and that there's goodness here, actually, and that there's sustenance and that there's support and that you can, one of the things that's been so important for me lately is like that you can ask for mercy and mercy comes. And then you can keep track, like, oh my God, mercy came. Wow. And I can keep track. That's one of the most challenging things. Like I had an experience recently, just because sometimes it is helpful to ground it in an actual experience. I went to a local public library for a documentary film screening. So, and it was in connection with my son's school. It's this great documentary called Most Likely to Succeed, which is about the future of educational models. So I really wanted to be there, in short, to support the school. I really wanted to see the movie. A guy came, who knows from where, who was really unwell, you know, very not dealing with any kind of reality, was making kind of outbursts, sat right in front of me, of course. Of course.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And would every once in a while turn to me and loudly be like, when was this movie made? I'm like, I don't know. So because I'm in a pretty vulnerable state, I'm like shaky, like I'm a little shaky. And then I notice myself start, right? Like, okay, like how am I gonna fix this situation? Do I talk to the librarian? Do I just wait it out? Do I like defend myself? Do I seal off? Do I, like I'm looking around for help and thinking about the plan. And then I was like, okay, if I ask for mercy, mercy comes. Like I need something here to change this dynamic so that I can just rest here and not be afraid, and so that I can enjoy my night, quite frankly. And I also need an experience of I'm not the one who has to do it. Like fix it, solve it, manipulate the dynamics. And a few minutes later, another man who was attending the documentary pulls up a chair next to this man. So it's like right in front of me, so I can kind of watch it happen out of my peripheral vision. This is during the film. And the short version is, performs like one of the most artful and skillful emotional jujitsus I've ever seen. He winds up, what winds up happening is the unwell man left, but feeling seen and heard and good mood of his own accord. He wasn't asked to leave. That's not what happened. But I was just like, oh my God. So it's like make a mental note. It makes a trust fall less scary. I asked for mercy. Mercy came. There's goodness here. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to pin it down. I didn't have to manipulate my environment. I could just have an experience. There's something other than me, the doer, who needs to make everything work out. And just asking for those little opportunities, those little safe opportunities of like, something, like, show me something. What have we got here? And I don't mean in a like God as Santa Claus kind of way, but like mercy, when we really need to say like, I need mercy, I need to sleep through the night and not feel afraid tonight. It comes, right? Like I need to, whatever, we get more support. That's the whole thing, is trusting that there's goodness on the other side of not defending, manipulating, or portraying a separate self.
It's a good story. Maybe it helps too, once you can contact that, diffuse the sense, well, of course, that you have to be in control, right? So that's one thing you're already pointing to. And then maybe it diffuses the sense you have to pin things down in other ways. Like, so for example, I'm having an interpersonal issue with somebody in my life right now. And sometimes I just don't get this person. Like the way they react to things is so different than the way I react to things. Sometimes there's people in life who, when they're stressed, it goes out towards others. And there's people in life who, when they're stressed, it goes in. I'm a go in person. So it's always harder for me to relate to people who, when shit's up for them, they fire hose.
Yeah.
Right. That's just how they do it. So there it is. Now, what happens, of course, is when I feel that level of distress in my vicinity, in Vanessa's vicinity, Vanessa goes, I'm bad. I'm disappointing. I've done something terribly wrong. This is going to go terrible, right? Now we're going to have a big problem. So now I've already started to try to shape, I'm bad, right? So that's one thing I'm starting to pin down. I'm bad. And this is going to go bad. And there's going to be conflict, right? And you see how like I'm trying to pin it down so I can understand what to expect. I can navigate it. And I know who are the players. In that same movement, I'm also trying to pin down that this person is a certain way. They're bad. They're angry at me. They're always going to be like this. They always take things out on me, or, fill in the blanks, right? And so in that whole, it was like a text exchange, right? But in this text exchange, there's all these things that I'm trying to pin down into solids, into unmovable parts. So that's what it means to pin it down. It doesn't mean like every discernment shouldn't be made. You shouldn't have an understanding or an opinion or a learning or an epiphany.
Process
Yeah, it's just that we try to pin everything down in this inexplainable, forevermore kind of a way. Period at the end of the sentence instead of a question mark. And it actually didn't serve me to be bad in that scenario. Didn't serve me to believe there's a major crisis pending. Didn't serve me to have to make her bad, right? And it's all static and it's actually not real. As soon as you start to see those periods, some things become immovable. And then I am most likely not in direct experience. Right. So that sort of comes to my mind. It's like, if we can trust, it frees us up. But then maybe this leads us, call back to the beginning. But then,
look at us, so pro.
Hello, I'm going to wrap this up. No. But then we are the people who don't know. Because one thing I was thinking, let's just say, even with health, I'm so sick of talking about my health, because one of the things I'm sick of is you're trying to understand if you're doing better or not. And if you are doing better, what you're doing better from. And if you're doing worse, what you're doing worse from. So for example, the weather outside is making me worse. I always do bad with humidity. Now, I have found, being 44 years old, almost just about 2 more months, I make myself older than I am every year. I'm 43. I have found, being almost 44, that I'm wrong a lot because you just don't understand, right? So you think it's one factor, it's a different factor, or it's multi-causal, and that's on everything. You think someone's mad at you, they're not. You think that you don't have the capacity to handle something, you do. You think that gluten was the problem and it is the only problem and it's why you were so sick and so tired. Turns out you just hated your life. Something needed to change, right? Like these things happen all the time. And it's not to say that it's advisable to pretend in some imaginary land that what is tangible, like I actually can't eat gluten or there are consequences, is a figment of my imagination. I'm certainly not talking about that. But there is this uncomfortable place where we can just hold question marks for what we assume to be facts and call them kind of like open inventory opinions. I don't know.
I like that. Please. That makes it sound really. Open. We're never going to get together our blueprint to a perfect life if we can't come up with cute language. So
no, get on that.
I will. I'll work on it. Yeah. Yeah. Being the question havers just allows for the kind of movement you're describing. And it allows for support.
And I think it's hard to feel, this is the vulnerable part on one level, the vulnerable part of being, of it being clear that you are not the one who knows is, will I be enough to others? Will they receive me? Will they want to work with me? You know, all of these different levels. There's the relational level of what makes that vulnerable. But really in the core place, I think it's vulnerable because we associate not knowing with being in danger, like being unsafe, being unworthy, unknowledgeable, as opposed to it being this quite massive maturational development.
Yeah.
Like in psychology, we would look at that as being a maturational development when someone can sit with paradox, when someone can sit with not having to pin things down, because then you have way more freedom to see truth, the truth of it all, right? Mm-hmm. It's all bliss and grit.
Oh, look at you. Boom.
I think that's a perfect place to end it if anything ever existed.
I think so too.
Thanks so much for listening to today's show. The show notes, including any resources we mentioned, live at blissandgrit.com. If you go to the website and scroll down, you'll see each episode's separate post, and we put the resources that we mentioned right in there. You can also come chat with us on social media at Instagram or Facebook. We're Bliss and Grit at both of those spots. Also, you can subscribe on the website, which is blissandgrit.com, if you want to be notified of any events we have brewing for the community, and also to get our weekly newsletter that we've been sending out. If you care to support the show, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our Facebook page. It helps us know how we're doing, and it also helps other people find the show so we can build a really rich group of people on the journey. Huge gratitude to all of you who have already written reviews. They touch us so much. Here's one from Ilias Ohm. They say, such deep insight from these two wonderful beings. I'm so grateful to have found them. They are changing my life. That is so sweet. Thank you so much for that. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back next week.